Hey everyone, thank you for coming. And after lunch, just to make sure, is everyone in the back awake? Yeah? Okay, cool. So first things first, before starting, I would like to thank React Alicante for having me. So can we have just a huge clap for the organization? So the title of my talk is React Remixed. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Daniel AFONSO. Yeah, I'm the second Daniel on stage right now. I'm a developer advocate at the OLX Group, and I'm an AGAD instructor. I'm an Outsider ambassador, and you can find me on Twitter and pretty much any social network at the handle Daniel JC Afonso. So, what is this talk going to be about? Well, this talk is actually about web fetch APIs, about HTML forms, form data objects, URLs, and headers. Now, you might be wondering, didn't you said that this was about Remix? Well, actually, yes. So pretty much what we are going to be doing here in the next couple of 10, 12 minutes, something like that, is get to know the basics so that you can get out of this session and hopefully just build something with Remix. So, let me just see. Did it pass? Okay, now it did. Now, I understand, like, JavaScript world, there's something always new showing up. Like, we all probably have a bit of fatigue with JavaScript frameworks. But hear me out about this. Because the thing with Remix is when you learn Remix, you're accidentally learning the web. Because how Remix is built, it's built so that you can have a bunch of transferable knowledge just by learning, well, Remix. So they say that when you learn Remix, you pretty much get everything that we had from the web for the last couple of years. Now, where did Remix come from? Well, Remix was created by the React router team. In this scenario, Michael Jackson and Ryan Florence. They created like 2 years ago, something like that. It usually started something with a paid license, but then it went up open source last year or in the beginning of this one, something like that. And what is Remix, you might be wondering? Well, Remix is treated like as a full stack web framework that pretty much lets you focus on the user interface and work back while delivering a very good experience to your users. With this in mind, Remix is considered to be like a couple of things. It's considered to be a compiler. It's considered to be a server-side HTTP handler. It's considered to be a server framework and a browser framework. So this looks like a lot, but let's just look very quickly into all of them. Oops. Okay. So by using AS-build, Remix will generate a couple of things. First things first, it will generate a server HTTP handler. Then it will generate a browser build. So this is a build that includes automatically code splitting by route, which is super cool, and has fingerprinted asset imports like CSS files and some images. So pretty much everything that you might need to run your application in a browser. Then it has also something which is an asset manifest. So pretty much this asset manifest is used by the server and the browser to pretty much know the entire dependency graph of your application. This is pretty much very useful to when you're trying to preload resources in the initial server render of your application. Pretty much through this asset manifest, it's how Remix is able to enable, remove actually the render and fetch waterfalls that we have in most web applications nowadays. By using these build artifacts, an application using Remix can be deployed to pretty much anywhere as long as it runs JavaScript. Remix is also a server-side HTTP handler. This is pretty much an handler that is given to an actual JavaScript server. So while Remix is running on the server, it's not a server, it's this handler. Remix is also a server framework. So if you're familiar with server-side MVC frameworks like Rails or Laravel, pretty much Remix is the view and the controller and leaves the model up to the developers. And finally, Remix is also a browser framework. So what does this mean? Pretty much when you serve a document to the browser, pretty much what Remix will do is keep hydrating your page with the browser build. And well, let's picture the following scenario. We have a user that clicks on a link. Pretty much what Remix will take care of is instead of making a round trip back to the server to get the entire document, what it will do is simply fetch the data for the next page on the server, updates, and then updates the UI. This has a couple of performance benefits. For instance, your assets don't need to be re-downloaded or pulled again from the cache. Your assets also don't need to be parsed by the browser once again. And the data that is fetched is much smaller than the entire document because everything is done on the server. So let's look at the philosophy for Remix. First things first is Remix fully embraces the server-client model. So you can make your server fast, but what you cannot make fast is your client user network. So pretty much, since you cannot do this, what you can do is try to decrease the amount of stuff you send over the network. Another thing, we also don't need to ship the entire skeleton of your UI because Remix will fetch and can even prefetch the data before your page is rendered. Remix works with the foundations of the web, browsers, HTTP, and HTML. So these are technologies that have been around for, well, many, many years. And, well, they are pretty good. Remix pretty much just leverages everything that has been working on the web for the last couple of years, embraces it fully, and creates an API that, well, doesn't abstract it, and you get that knowledge that's transferable from one place to the other. It uses JavaScript to augment the user experience by pretty much emulating your browser behavior. So what does this mean? It means that in most applications using Remix, you might not need JavaScript. Adding JavaScript to your application, it's what's considered to be progressive enhancement. So pretty much when you add JavaScript to your Remix, it's pretty much to a way that you can speed up your user experience. For instance, let's picture a page transition. Remix here, when you have JavaScript, it will help by pretty much not downloading and evaluating all the assets that need to be transferred. And it will only fetch like parts of the data that change instead of fetching everything. Finally, on the philosophy part, it doesn't over-abstract the underlying technologies. So what does this mean? Once again, if you get good at Remix, you get good at using the web development in general. Because all the APIs that are built don't abstract stuff. The stuff you're doing, it's pretty much the same thing as you're using the browser. So let's just review a couple of fundamentals so that you can go home and try Remix. There are a couple of things that I consider to be the mostly fundamentals, and the first part is nested routing. So nested routing is pretty much the general conception that you can couple segments of the URL to reflect on the UI. So this might be tricky, so let's look at this example that we have here. Here we have two routes, a user profile, a user account. And what we can see here is this UI. So the first part, the base part of it, where we have the user and the name, it's equal on both routes. What changes, basically, it's when you click on profile, you want to render the profile part, and when you click on account, you want to render the account part. So nested routing will pretty much pick up the URL and only render that specific part of the URL on the page. So when you click profile, it will render the profile route only inside of that part. The base continues existing. And when you click on count, it will change to the user count and only render the nested account part of it. So yeah, this is nested routing. Now, one thing that's, very discussed in the React ecosystem is how we do data fetching, how we do mutations. We can do use effect, we can use React query, we can use SWR. With Remix, it's so much simpler, and the way to do this, it's crazy. So let's look at this snippet that we have here. We have a thing here. We have a component that's called heroes, and this component will supposedly get your heroes data and display it on your application. Now, how do we get this data? By getting something that Remix calls loaders. So pretty much every time you have a loader in your component, your application, what Remix will do is when this page when this route is triggered, this loader will be fetching this data or doing something on the server side. And when the component renders, by using the useLoader hook, it will get this data and render it into your application. So pretty much, one thing that's important to be aware in loader here is that we see a JSON function there returning the data. This is pretty much a wrapper over the redirect response, because pretty much Remix just leverages responses like we do in a browser. It picks the response and it returns like I think it's 301. I might be wrong on that, don't quote me. But it returns your data with the correct header, and then on the heroes component, it renders it. And this is how you do data fetching with Remix. To do mutations, it seems like a very similar aspect. The thing here is with Remix, the way we do mutations, it's how we have been doing mutations in a browser for a couple of years, by using forms. So pretty much what we do is we pick up a form, we define what method we are going to do, in this scenario, either a get or a post, And when we define what's the route we want to send our data to. After the user submits the data, we have an action. This action will receive the data that it's sent by our application. And by having access to the request, the request from that your application did, you can access your form data and take that form data out of the form data object. Then you do your mutation normally as you would do on the client side, and you return a redirect, so we can redirect to a page where you can show this user data. So yeah, these are pretty much the fundamentals. So you can just play with Remix, nested routing, loaders, and actions. Now, if you want to play a bit with Remix, you can try a couple of stacks. Remix has a bunch of stacks. These are the ones that they shared, but then everyone can go ahead and create their own routes, stacks actually. Each stack has a bunch of ways, so place where you can deploy your application, the database option that you use, the testing option, so it's super cool. And finally, the $1 million question that I've always been asked, which is, okay, I'm using Next. Should this mean I stop using Next and get using Remix? Well, all the data that we have in this slide came from a study that the Remix team did with Versal. So they collaborated together to test Remix against Next, and they come to conclusion to this couple of things. First things first, Remix is as fast or faster than Next at serving static and dynamic content. It usually enables a faster user experience even on slow networks, and automatically handles errors, interruptions, and race conditions. So for instances, if you click on a button and you click multiple times, and this button would trigger a data mutation. So pretty much what Remix will do here is all the requests, Remix cancels them and only sends the last one. So it takes care of the race conditions even for a bunch of requests. And build times are usually nearly instant and decoupled for data. So the question here is, should we stop using Next? I'd say not, because one thing that's important to know is that Remix came to, well, competition is always good. So Remix changed the way that Versal and Next looked at stuff. They kept improving. Versal actually did an RFC for the latest version of Next, which adds a bunch of things that Remix has. So I would encourage you to check that. But if you're starting a new application and you would like to try it, then yeah, give it a try. It seems very production ready. I'm actually rewriting a couple of applications myself to start using it. So yeah, pretty much that was my time. I'm Daniel Afonso. Thank you for watching.